Studio 22.
We're back.
Toss it to you.
We're back, folks. We're back live in studio. Do we know
Studio,
yet?
at
Studio?
this point.
The idea board is running out, but we're back here at Studio 89-22.
I actually I did have this is an interesting way to start off, but I did have a suggestion from one of my buddies who listened to the podcast.
Did he put it in? Wait, is it official? In the suggestion box? That's the only way that it gets read.
So what he said was thinking about, especially talking about Syracuse and the history of Syracuse, he was mentioning, what about Studio 44 for Jim Brown? And I thought it could work too, because 22 times 2, you got 44, so you could work it in a bunch of different ways.
You could.
It's an idea.
It's an idea.
Put it on the back burner. Shout out Jaden. Great idea.
We're not here to shoot down any ideas.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
How dare us for even thinking of that?
No, I like it, though.
Yeah. But
it could be multi-sport athlete. We're talking about multiple sports here.
Pretty decent athlete.
Yeah. Not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Anyway, welcome back. It's Locked and Loaded with our co-host here, Charlie Lockwood. And we thought, based on the last, the first episode that we shot, had a great time. We were looking forward to today.
Yes.
As we're always looking forward to the next podcast.
Absolutely.
Here in studio at Talbot Orange Sports HQ. So, Charlie, let's get right into it. I mean, great stories. And we have a feeling we got a lot more coming our way.
I think that was the biggest takeaway from that episode, especially talking to people who were able to watch and listen to it. And by the way, when you want to do that, Top 100 Sports, subscribe on YouTube, follow us Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. You can find a lot of clips, especially some of the clips of Charlie's stories. But that was what people took away. I think just how kind of crazy some of those stories were, because especially when you think about high school sports, I think a lot of younger kids now, a lot of those stories are, I mean, it might even seem foreign to them at this point, some of that stuff.
Right.
It's the tip of the iceberg.
And when we have these discussions and we're talking about these stories and I'm reminiscing and I'm remembering these stories, they seem like they happened just yesterday, and they were 30 years ago. And on top of that, after the podcast last week, and I had a chance to listen to it, and I had a chance to reflect on some of those stories with some of my friends.
Yeah.
I was getting a lot of texts. I was getting phone calls, direct messages online, and it was cool. And, I will say, and I want to make sure I'm crystal clear on this, that even though there were some tough love and some of those stories I talked about when I was at West Tennessee, having a person like Mike Masser in my life as a coach, as a mentor, it's just, I can't even put it into words how lucky I was. He was the Hall of Fame lacrosse coach. He was an old school coach, very successful on every level. But I know I made some of those stories sound, tough for a lot of people to listen to, and some people might not even believed in them. But they definitely shaped us, and they made us the player and the people that we are today. Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure I threw that in there.
Yeah. So high school, had a great career in high school, and then you made the jump, right? You made the jump to a historic program, Syracuse lacrosse program. And tell us a little bit about the transition into that, and kind of what you were thinking going into your freshman year, and how that kind of played out for you.
Yeah. So most of my high school years, 10th, 11th grade, probably 9th, 10th, 11th grade, I was, focused on North Carolina. That was the one school I really, really loved. And I think
you never told me that. That's interesting.
Right. So a lot of guys my age and in my grade at the time, we had just watched the greatest player ever, Michael Jordan, come through and come through North Carolina. And at the time, North Carolina in 1986 had won a national championship in lacrosse. Their basketball team with Jordan, and then it was Perkins and James Worthy, and on and on and on. They were the standard in college basketball, and Jordan. Great school colors, the Carolina blue. Everything was going. So everything I had in pretty much 10th and 11th grade was Carolina blue, to the point where I went to one camp ever when I was a kid.
Like a recruiting camp type thing?
Yeah, and it was at Syracuse University. And my coach was a guy, Tim Nelson, and he was one of the greats at Syracuse. And, he had a connection at North Carolina. I believe he was an assistant or something. But I pretty much told everyone that's where I wanted to go to school. I wanted to go to North Carolina, and that was my dream. And then going into my junior year, senior year, Syracuse was starting to come alive. And a lot of that had to do with one of the guys I spoke about on the last podcast, John Zilberti, who was just an unbelievable player.
One of your first coaches, right?
One of the best attackmen ever play the game. West Tennessee guy, Syracuse guy. He was on that team. And then there was these two Canadians, Gary and Paul Gate, that people hadn't heard of a lot until they showed up to Syracuse and were showing their, unorthodox style of box lacrosse skills that they had, over the years had mastered up in Canada, and now they're coming down here and playing field lacrosse, and they had instant success.
Wow.
And Syracuse started winning championship after championship after they got here, along with just an unbelievable cast of players with them. The guys that they played with were also the best in their position. So they made an already great situation almost unbeatable.
Yeah.
And so I would say that once Syracuse started winning championships in 88, 89, and 90, they had a three-peat. That's kind of when I got excited and said, maybe I should stick around here. I wanted to win national championships. So, it was one of those things, guys. It's a lot different back then. There was no club lacrosse. Okay.
Yeah,
right.
So you played for your high school team.
Yep.
And that's how you got recognized. But I was fortunate enough between my junior and senior year here in Central New York and in New York, there was what they called the Empire State Games. In the Empire State Games,
now that kind of dwindled. That was like when I was going through. So I graduated in 2004. It was you could see it. It was starting to kind of dissipate a little bit. It was
decline.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
back,
Empire was huge when you were going through.
That's what it was, and every lacrosse player in the area knew that if you were on the Empire State team, you had a good chance of getting recruited.
Yeah.
So not only did a bunch of us, I think there was 7 or 8 of us West Tennessee guys on one team. So the roster was 20. Half the team was pretty much West Tennessee. That's how good we were. But we not only made the team, which was a nice accomplishment just to be on the team, but we went to the Empire State Games. They were held at Ithaca, at Shokal Field in Ithaca. And the teams that we played against, traditionally Long Island and Westchester, always had really strong teams. And Central New York had always done good, but, it was tough to win a gold medal. And that's what we were playing for.
Yeah.
In that particular Empire State Games, we didn't lose a game.
Wow.
And we hammered every team we played, doubled up everybody, tripled up. I mean, it was bad. We put ourselves on the map that summer.
Right.
And the team that we beat in the round robin and then also beat in the championship game, they had guys like Dom Finn, who's in the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. They had Roy Colsley, Hall of Fame. Rick Beardsley, 4-time All-American in Syracuse. This was on one team.
Wow.
We hammered them twice.
Like no big deal.
They were tough, very formidable.
Okay.
But the scores, they weren't 1-goal games in overtime either. We did very well. So when we all got back from the Empire State Games, a few of us, started to hear from different schools and whatnot. And one of the first schools that I heard from was Syracuse. And it wasn't much longer, after I started talking to Syracuse that I had committed to them very early.
What was the clincher for you? Like, what was that? I'm doing it. I'm going to Syracuse.
Yeah, especially to sway you away from North Carolina, like it sounded
right.
Like you
so
were,
I looked at Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, obviously Loyola.
Yeah.
Very small.
Those are the schools I was looking at. And I would say when I heard from Kevin Donahue, he was an assistant. He's the first guy that called me. He was also a former West Tennessee guy.
Oh, nice.
He was an assistant at Syracuse, so he called me. And then John Desco, who was an assistant, he called me. And then Coach Simmons, when he came over to my house, the type of man and coach he was, it all came down very quickly. Back then, when I was in school, most of my friends were committing to colleges in the back half of their senior year.
Was that just how it was? I mean, that's how it was back. Okay.
That's how it was.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So you were hearing between your junior and senior years from schools, most of us, and then you were making your decision your senior year, and most people took their time. There was no urgency.
So you didn't hold a press conference in 8th grade and
I
said
did not.
where you were going. Okay.
I did, and plus,
All right.
Mr. Massera.
There wasn't a cool graphic being thrown on Instagram with
No.
you in the team's
Coach
jersey.
Massera, I'm pretty sure, would not have allowed that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think I was one of the first guys in my class because everything just came together really quick. They were winning championships. I wanted to win a championship. The scholarship, everything just made sense. and it went down pretty
Was that
quick.
the driving factor, though? Was it championships? Was that kind of your...
Listen, Syracuse has a great reputation. There are also, it was a good academic school as well.
Sure,
and
yeah,
all
absolutely.
the schools I was looking at were probably on the same level. Although I will tell you, the very first school I heard from was Yale.
Oh wow!
Wow.
And then I'm not even sure I had a chance to send them my transcript. I'm not sure it would have measured up. But the first school I ever heard was from Yale. I think I still have the letter because back then that's how colleges communicated.
Yeah.
It was through mail. So I'd come home every day and run to the mailbox and see what schools I had heard from, and so that's how they did it back then.
So can you just briefly just talk about, because I never had a coach knock on my door to get me to go to their school.
same.
I wasn't like a highly touted like that.
I
But
was a
can you like
lowly Division III.
can you tell us a little bit like about that moment when he came over, like anything in particular that you remember of?
I can
Okay.
remember like it was 5 minutes ago because Coach Simmons was one of those guys. So
Like you knew he was on his way. I'm sure you guys were cleaning the house, right?
Everyone's nervous.
Yeah.
Everyone's nervous.
Fluffing the pillows.
But I just want to make sure, and most people that are listening to this, especially lacrosse fans, they know who Roy Simmons Jr. is. So I had the luxury of going from Mike Masser, the standard of high school lacrosse coaches, Hall of Fame coach, and then I got passed on to Roy Simmons Jr., who was also known as the greatest college coach, Hall of Famer, and had coached some of the best players in the history of the game. He's on his way over to the house, and we had open minds, my parents and I. So it was my mom, my dad, myself at that meeting or whatever, and he shows up, and I think he was at our house. Coach Simmons and Coach Desko were at my house for about an hour and a half. And I think for 90% of the conversation, we talked about African art. And we talked about things that Coach Simmons did on his free time. Coach Simmons, for you that don't know out there, Coach Simmons was well-versed in many areas, including art and just, he had such history. Mm-hmm. He was so knowledgeable about so many things.
He had a bigger view in life, right?
He did.
Yeah.
In fact, lacrosse, believe it or not, the X's and O's and the national championships that he accumulated over the years, that might be the smaller part of who Roy Simmons is. I thought that Coach Simmons, through my 4 years, if there was such a thing as a second father, I had a second father with Roy Simmons Jr. I got to Syracuse. Yeah. So that's the type of person we're talking about. So he's over at the house for hour and a half. We're thinking we're going to be talking about lacrosse before he gets there. And then an hour and a half later, he walks out the door, and we didn't talk about lacrosse a lot. But there was just something about him, and I know that it's cliche, and we've heard this in sports, but if there was ever a man that made you want to run through a brick wall, this was the guy.
Wow. And
so right then and there, that pretty much cemented, my feelings towards Coach and Syracuse University and Coach Desko as well. Coach Desko is a Hall of Fame coach too. I mean, here's a guy.
Oh, yeah.
He was on.
Absolutely.
He was on his staff. So between Coach Roy Simmons Jr., John Desko, and guys like Kevin Donahue, I was spoiled. I had the best of the best at all times, and their support. So. I get the goosebumps just thinking about it, guys, because there's not a lot of people that have those type of people in their lives. Yeah. And so it was a pretty home run type decision for me.
So you commit to Syracuse, you make it official, then you go on campus, right? Freshman year, fall semester. What was the moment, I've arrived at Syracuse lacrosse? Is there a specific moment for you that?
Oh yeah.
Let's hear it, man. What do you got?
Oh yeah. So. It didn't take very long. It was about. Well, there's a couple moments. I'm going to stay on lacrosse though.
Okay.
Because there's some moments when you're a freshman that don't take place on the field.
Yeah, that is correct.
They take
Welcome
place.
To college
they
moments.
take place at this place called Marshall Street and other places. But we'll save that for another episode or 5.
Let's not give it all
episodes.
away.
The after hours episode.
So we'll stick to lacrosse right now, and I'll tell you what my. We'll call it aha moment was. And that was about a week to 2 weeks after I showed up at Syracuse, and you meet all these other hotshots from around the country. you're all gathering up, and you're all alphas, and you've heard about guys because back then, internet, social media, it didn't exist.
Sure.
So when you heard about players that, were going to be in your class and stuff, you might have had a chance. Like I played against some of the guys in Empires, but the kids in Maryland, the kids in Carolina, Virginia, Long Island, Connecticut, I never saw those guys.
Yeah.
We never played them. Mm-hmm. No clubs, didn't play them.
Right.
So, the initial shock of meeting your new teammates, because there's that instant camaraderie when you show up the first week or two. Hey, we're all freshmen. We're all in this together. But there's a lot of guys that are used to being the number one guy at all these schools showing up at one place. Mm-hmm. And that's what Syracuse was like back then.
Interesting.
All the biggest recruits, all the biggest names, they were all there.
The egos, they're all there.
Yeah, so we get there, and, after that period of adjustment and trying to gel, and then also the competitive nature of, like, I still want to kick your ass type thing, we got through that, and then we started to meet as a team in a fall ball setting. Mm-hmm. And then, for those fans that know lacrosse or don't know lacrosse is really 2 seasons. The main season's always the spring. Right? And then our B season is always in the fall or fall ball. And so when we got to fall ball as freshmen or underclassmen, we just went out there and, we were doing whatever we were told. If it was carrying buckets, if it was doing this, we just did whatever we had to.
Yep.
That's just the way it was. Back then, believe it or not, most of us younger guys, we respected our elders. We did whatever we were supposed to do. Yeah. No questions asked. And so that went on, and then we ended up playing a fall ball game not too far into September of my freshman year. And it was a rematch of the national championship the year before. So in Gary and Paul Gates' senior year at Syracuse, that was the third of national championship in a row, three-peat. They beat Loyola by, let's say, 10 goals. It was one of the largest margins ever.
Jeez.
And it was considered one of the greatest teams of all time. It was just an incredible group of guys. And Loyola had a great team. I know a lot of guys that were on that Loyola team, and Syracuse just made them look like a JV type of opponent. It was pretty incredible.
Dang.
So now Syracuse loses all this talent, right? And it's a crop of new guys coming in. Gary and Paul Gate are gone. And Loyola's coming up to play us. And they still had some horses left over from that game. So you can only imagine what they were feeling like over the last 5 or 6 months since that Memorial Day beatdown.
Massacre.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So we're in Manley Fieldhouse, and we played at Coyne Field, which was
a cement pad.
Not friendly. We talked about that when I was at West County. We played on that a lot, and that was a very hard surface. And back then there was smelling salts given out on the sideline. The guy banged their head off the ground. They got some smelling salts. They were right back in the game, and it was just part of how we did things back then, right?
Yeah.
So we're about ready to play Loyola in a rematch of the national championship game. And
when men were men,
I was going to say, was there a concussion protocol back
then? Or dummies were dummies.
Or dummies were dummies, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we did some crazy things. But anyway, so we're sitting in Manley Fieldhouse as a team. And all the sophomores, juniors, and seniors have their numbers.
Sure.
We're getting ready to take the field. And one of the things Coach Simmons promised me when I was at West Genesee was that I would have the ability to take my high school number, which was number 7, and continue and you wear that when I was at Syracuse. Which, when you're a high school
kid,
that's
you want to hear it.
It's a nice
it's awesome.
Absolutely.
It's a nice thing, and you want to own that. You want to take it to the next level, all that stuff. So I was happy to see that when the sophomores, juniors, and seniors, they actually exited Manley Fieldhouse to go start warming up for the game. The 10 or 12 freshmen that were left behind, had to get their jerseys. And that's the day that we got our numbers. And so on the floor at Manley Fieldhouse were all of the jerseys that were not spoken for, eligible to be worn. And so guys started grabbing numbers, and Coach Simmons had my number 7, so no one would take that.
Yeah, that's
and
nice.
So as I walked over to get my number from Coach Simmons, I think I was either grabbing it or about to grab it. And I had noticed, and everyone else noticed too, that number 22 and 19 had not been touched on the ground. No freshman dared to take Gary and Paul Gates' jersey, right? At least not so soon. Maybe it was going to happen at some point. It just wasn't going to happen now. And so Coach Simmons looked at me and he said, "Hey, Charlie, if you have any guts, you'll put down your high school number and you'll grab that one right there." And it was number 22. And so, again, I got goosebumps, man.
I'm
just
getting
thinking about
goosebumps
this,
right now.
okay? So think about this. I'm just a kid. I'm 18 years old. And he's doing that to me. And we're about ready to go out and play Loyola. Big game, right? So he gave me a minute or two to think about it. It seemed like an eternity. I wasn't sure, I was wrestling with it because I knew you put that number on. I even knew that was going to be a super big deal, and I was going to be met with a lot of looks and whatever.
Yep.
And so I picked up number 22, and I think even some of the freshman guys, the guys I was just starting to bond with, said, "What in the hell are you thinking?"
Did it still smell like Gary?
So I picked up the jersey. I went out there to warm up with the rest of the group, and I remember guys like Pat McCabe, Hall of Fame lacrosse player, Tom Marichek, Hall of Fame player. These are some of the best names I just mentioned in the game's history, looking at me kind of funny, giving me the business. I'm a freshman, haven't done anything. So why do you deserve that?
Right.
Why do you have the nerve to even think that you can put that on, right? So that was a little bit nerve-wracking on my end because I could feel, and you could feel the looks. I didn't have to see them, I could feel them. And that game, it was a tightly contested game. They were very good still, and we were new. We were all younger kids. And in that game, it went to overtime. And in the overtime session, I had the game-winning goal in overtime.
No big deal.
And we won that, so that was my first game.
Was that your first goal, or did you score a couple early?
I had scored, but
okay, nice.
None bigger than that one.
Yeah, of course.
And so in my mind, and I think in the minds of my teammates, especially the upperclassmen, that helped that process immensely.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate.
I put that to bed.
Exactly.
Right.
It kind of did it help you sort of come to terms with?
It did.
I got this.
In fact, the next day in the local papers, they wrote an article on, I think, whatever my age was, going on 22. And they segued into that, and it took a lot of pressure off me.
Journalism right there. I like that
and
a lot.
It means a lot. And I talk about this 30 years later, that it's not really the physical part of trying to wear 22. It's the mental aspect. And that's going to separate the guys that can do it versus the guys that are struggling with it. And, I joke around with Casey Powell, and I know we're going to be chatting with him here soon, but I had to take the number 22 from Gary Gate. I took it from Jordan. Okay, so just think about
the Jordan
that
of 22.
for a quick second.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I did okay with it for 4 years.
Sure.
But Casey took it from me. Yeah. Okay, I'm the one that took it from Gary. So as far as I'm concerned, I did a lot of the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And then those guys passed it on and just did a tremendous job with it. But as far as the story goes, man, I don't know how anyone can say they had a harder job than me after taking it from Gary.
What does it mean to you to kind of be, because now that, now obviously the kind of the lore around that number has grown so much at the Syracuse lacrosse program. Does it mean something special to you? I mean, obviously, like you've talked about, you're still talking about it 30 years later, but does it mean something special to you to know that you were a part of that legacy?
It does. Yeah. It does. And, I guess when you get older and you look back and reflect on certain things, it has taken on a meaning almost all by itself over the last 20, 30 years. And I can honestly say that I bet you Gary, myself, Casey, Ryan, Mike, the guys that, wore it for those 5, consecutive times.
Sure.
It's meant a lot to all of us.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
And it means a lot to Syracuse University, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But I think it meant a lot for the game. I mean, if you go from program to program, whether it's a club or high school program in the country, a lot of times you'll see some of the impact players in those programs, on those teams wearing 22.
That number. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it has really had a big, and I'm honestly, I'm very, very grateful that I was just able to play a part in that. Yeah. And I was very lucky and fortunate.
Carried on,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, do you think that there would be something? Because obviously, one of the things that struck me that you were talking about was how it felt like an eternity when you were trying to decide whether or not to put that number on. Is there something now that you think that you would maybe tell yourself, your younger self, deciding to whether or not to make that change? Is there something you would tell yourself that now to maybe help yourself ease those?
Well, I can tell you right now, no doubt in my mind, that I was a AAA personality. I was an alpha. I know that only certain guys can make those decisions.
Sure.
And even want to put it on them. Now, listen, there was other guys that I played with at Syracuse that had that same mentality.
Yeah.
They weren't number 22, but they still had that mentality. And that's why we were so successful as a team. Okay. But I definitely had that mentality. And I think if you struggle back and forth too long, whether I should wear it or not, there's your answer. You shouldn't be wearing it.
Interesting.
And so I know guys like Casey Powell and Mike Powell and Ryan Powell, they thrived on wanting to wear it.
Yeah.
They welcomed the challenge. And those guys, I'm telling you right now, as great of lacrosse players as they were, and Gary included, and hopefully guys like Joey Spallina, and there's Jojo Moresco, Dan Hardy, there's other guys that have worn the jersey. It's can they mentally get through the process of the ups and downs and taking that responsibility or taking the criticism, taking all that comes with the number. And I think that's as much of a story as the physical and the goals and the assists. That's probably the easy part.
Absolutely.
And I know we're going to get to Casey here soon. Here, I just want to get your thoughts on Joey Spallina, who's wearing that number currently, freshman, outstanding high school career.
Yeah,
unbelievable.
Right? Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah, talk about once in a generation talent.
Yeah,
I mean, from what we've seen in high school so far, incredible.
Yeah,
incredible.
So we're all obviously wishing the program the best, wishing him the best.
Yeah.
And moving forward with it. Just any thoughts with him as he starts off with his young career, and
yes,
maybe any one tip, advice that you could provide to him? And
definitely, and I've already had that interaction with him. He's a great young man.
Yeah.
And, he's actually taken time out of his schedule early this fall to shoot around and play with my sons, Charlie and Luke.
Oh, nice.
And that's just the epitome of a guy that wants to give back. Yeah. Already at such a young age, he's already received so much from the game. He's already giving back. And it's really impressive to see a kid his age do that. Yeah. So whether I'm not sure. I don't have a crystal ball in front of me. I'm not sure how he's going to do. But as far as I'm concerned, he's already a winner.
Oh, that's
awesome.
I
can see it. I can feel it just being around him for the few times that I have.
Yeah.
The one thing that I would stress to him, because we do have a game under our belt right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, Syracuse played Vermont this past weekend. It was 7-5 game. It was, a little bit tighter than probably Syracuse had wanted it to be. And Joey went out there, and his skills are unmatched. There's no doubt about it. Skill-wise, he's right at the top of the class. Yeah. I would say that he would tell you and us that he struggled a little bit shooting. Mm-hmm. I think he was 1 for 15 in the game. He's got everything in front of him. Yeah. And these little blips are going to come and go. It's how he handles it, and then he moves on. Like, you don't have time to get down on that. Now, he's under a microscope, a huge microscope, and everything's going to be magnified.
Right.
So when he has an off day shooting, it's not like the normal guy. It's going to be looked at 100x, 100 times over, and he's going to get railed. And the thing about it is there's social media today. He's a kid. I don't know if he looks at social media. I don't know what his social media prowess is, but I'll tell you what. These kids are not immune to knowing what's going on out there. They read it, they hear it, and all that other stuff. So I just hope that he can move on because, they got 2 games this weekend, Friday and Sunday they play. So to me, his biggest challenge is going to be how well he can move past it, let the game come to him, because he is the quarterback of that team, no matter what. And I hate to say it, but there's going to be an absurd amount of pressure on him.
Sure.
And Syracuse is going to go a little bit with how he
goes. Sure.
Right, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
They have a lot of talent on that team. So it's possible that they can win big games without a lot as far as production from him. But in my eyes, in the big games, if they're going to be successful, he's going to be a main part of it.
Interesting.
I don't think he has to carry the team, but he has to be a main part of it.
Yeah.
So once the game comes to him, his skills are unmatched. He's going to be perfectly fine. We texted after the game. We texted even this morning. And I think he's got a great attitude and a great focus. And I'm really pulling for him.
It'll happen.
Seems like a great kid, and he's deserved everything he got in high school.
Yeah.
And now let's see how he does in college. But, the problem is when you get to big boy college ball, every guy he's facing, their trophy is Joey Spallina, right?
Yeah.
They don't care what he did in high school.
Yeah.
And they don't care what they did in high school.
Yeah.
It's what he does from now moving forward. And that's sort of how you remembered, especially on this stage, Syracuse University. So I think he's going to do great, but I would say it was, from his standpoint, probably not exactly the start he wanted, but they got the W, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. It's going to be interesting to see, especially moving forward. And, obviously we mentioned, Joey Spallina, the newest Syracuse lacrosse member to wear 22, and what you guys are going to be able to see coming up right now is an interview with one of the former members of the 22 club, we call it, at Syracuse University. That's Casey Powell. So if you guys want to stick around for that interview, make sure you do, because he's a great conversation. We got to talk to him a little bit at LaxCon. So
that's right.
Tune in for that, and we'll see you guys there.
We're back here in studio, and we were just talking with Charlie Lockwood, giving us his stories as he was dealing with his freshman year and picking that. Still got goosebumps. They haven't gone down, by the way, when you grab that 22.
No.
Yeah. But now we have another special guest that's not in studio because he's too good for Syracuse now. He's moved out. He's down south now. But it's a privilege to be here with you, Charlie. And why don't you intro this young gentleman in here to Studio 89-22?
Of course. I'd love to. I mean, this is a guy, came after me at Syracuse, and I had a chance. I was fortunate enough to play with him on Team USA for the 1998 World Games. And Casey Powell is someone that I respect at the highest levels. I've admired his game and his athletic ability and everything he's done for the sport of lacrosse. It goes beyond goals and assists in his playing day career. It goes well beyond that with the things he's done off the field and for the growth of the game. And I really respect him for that. And without further ado, Casey Powell is joining the show here today, and it's good seeing and hearing from you, Case.
Hey man, great to be on, and look forward to chatting with you. It was great to see you a couple weeks ago in Baltimore, and look forward to a discussion here on the great sport of lacrosse.
Nice.
Absolutely. Yeah, Casey, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it, especially, I know I mentioned when I got to chat with you at LaxCon, great names think alike, so what a great addition to the show and a great addition to the episode. So I guess we could start off, we're kind of talking about, the discussion we were talking about before we had you on here is about the number 22 in particular. And we talked about kind of Charlie's journey to choosing that number, to finding that number. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey? What was it like picking the number? Did you know about kind of the history behind it? What was that whole process like for you?
Oh, I knew all about the history. I was inspired by it. I used to pretend I was Gary Gate and then Charlie in my backyard, and I would go and watch both Gary and Charlie, and I'd see what plays they made, and they were both kind of different players, but both represented number 22 equally and made it famous, and that's what I wanted to do. They inspired me to want to go to Syracuse and represent that university and wear that number. So I was well aware what it is, what it meant, and I was proud to have the opportunity to have a chance to wear it and continue its legacy.
So when you came to Syracuse, did your coach kind of give you that choice? What did that process look like? Did you go in saying, hey, I want to wear number 22? What did that look like?
Well, I knew number 22 number 22 Charlie Lockwood had graduated, and I knew number 22 was available when I walked onto campus, and I was going for it, no doubt. And after a couple of weeks of fall ball where I was performing at a pretty good level, I came in kind of ready to rock and made an impact enough where Coach Simmons pulled me aside in Manley Fieldhouse after one of our fall practices and says, hey, you ready for number 22? And I said, yes, Coach. And he goes, all right, big expectations. And he just kind of threw it at me and walked away. And that was how I got number 22.
Case, I had a similar situation with Coach Simmons. It was a little different because, I was going to wear my high school number 7 from West Jenny, and I went to pick it up. In case I want you to remember what it was like sitting in Manley Fieldhouse with all the freshmen. When you were a freshman at Syracuse, and we were getting ready to go play Loyola for a fall ball game. It was a rematch of the national championship the year before. And nobody had picked up 22 or 19 case. It was laying on the surface at Manley Fieldhouse. And I went to get 7. Simmy had it in his hands. I said, "This is great." And he goes, "If you had any guts, you'd put this one down and you'd pick up that one." Wow. And so Case, I just want you to understand this, man. You had to take it from me. I mean, so that was good. I had to take it from Gary. I took it from Jordan. Okay, so I told these guys I did most of the heavy lifting, and then I passed it off. It was a little bit easier from me to Casey to Ryan to Mike.
No doubt, you were the perfect buffer.
I'll tell you what, Casey. I mean, the 1 minute that Coach Simmons gave me, it seemed like it was like 4 hours. And then I walked out. I walked out on the field, and I seen Tom Marichek and Pat McCabe. You can only imagine. I was just a kid. What they were thinking and how much stuff they gave me, for a lack of a better word.
Hey Casey, I just want to ask you about the pressures of that number and that freshman year for you. Did you felt like you rose to the challenge? Were there struggles with it, or in your mind, how did you felt you did that first year?
Everybody keeps bringing that up and the pressure of everything, but I didn't feel it. I prepared for the moment. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I dreamed of. That's what I prepared myself, both mentally and physically, to want to do and want to be. And, putting that jersey on, I felt like I was right where I was meant to be. We went out. I started. We won a national championship. So I got we kicked off the year or my era of wearing the jersey in a very positive way by winning the championship. But obviously I knew the history of it, but that's what I wanted, and that's it wasn't something that I was ever intimidated by or felt pressured to perform. I knew that if I could play at my level and do the things that I knew I was capable of doing consistently and productively, that it would take care of itself, and that's exactly what happened.
And kind of moving past that, then you go on to play professional lacrosse, and you kept that number with you. Was that a conscious decision as well, obviously, to kind of keep that number going as you went through the professional ranks?
Yeah, for sure. That became my identity, and I felt very lucky to wear the 22 at Syracuse and then continue it on. So I put a lot of effort into my career at Syracuse, and then good enough to put myself in a position to play professional lacrosse, and I just kind of continued the positive play or the production that I started in college.
Case, can you share with our viewers and everyone out there that's listening? It's kind of a cool story how the number transitioned from you to Ryan, because Ryan initially didn't wear 22, if I'm correct on that, right? How did that go down?
Yeah, I think Ryan had his eyes set on it. I think he knew exactly. It goes to the top player. It goes to Syracuse's top gun, and Ryan, no doubt, coming back as a returning All-American. He knew that's what he wanted to do. So he was ready to take the team, put the team on his back, and put all the players in the wagon and go for it. And that's exactly what he did. He had an outstanding couple years wearing that jersey, national champion, tied the Syracuse scoring record, and was the national player of the year. So he switched from our high school number, which is number 1. Both of us wore that, and then he went on and added to the number as well.
Kind of going off of the number 22 for a second, but it's such a cool story when you look at yourself and your 2 brothers all playing at Syracuse, wearing that number, and then obviously growing up in a lacrosse family together. Can you kind of talk a little bit about what that was like and what that connection means to you and what it meant to share all of that with your brothers?
It was so cool. We were there at Syracuse for 10 years straight. We went to 10 Final Fours, and the Dome security knew my grandmother on a first name basis, where they put a rocking chair in the security closet, pulled it out with a nice padded cushion for her each and every game at the handicap section. So
that's awesome.
My parents kind of became residents there, and being Syracuse lacrosse players and Syracuse lacrosse parents became kind of a lifestyle. We were, lucky, and the cool thing I think about number 22 is Syracuse has an all-time NCAA record of 22 straight Final Fours. Getting to that number is pretty magical as well. But it was an amazing ride. We still continue to reflect. While we were there, we were kind of just doing our thing, and that's who we were, and that's what we're training to be as Syracuse lacrosse players, and represent the university and play in the Dome and for the greatest lacrosse program in history. And it just kind of became who we were. So we were really proud of it. We just like the Syracuse team, we expected to win. We expected to be successful, and we went out and played every game as hard as we could.
That's amazing. And I wonder too, when you look, because I think this isn't something we've even discussed with Charlie yet, when you look at professional lacrosse, but obviously you had a very, very successful professional career. What do you think was the biggest difference? Because it's something interesting to ask, successful athletes going from high school to college, and then now college to professional. What was that transition like? And, what did it take to kind of more or less get comfortable at the professional level to where you succeeded as well as you did?
Coach Simmons always wrote on the board a Bible verse, 1:18-24. Today is the day the Lord giveth, rejoice and be glad. And he wasn't religious, but it was something that it was a message that he sent to us about, today's the day. It's not what you did yesterday. It's not what's going to happen tomorrow. It's about right now. And that's what I was focused on, whether when I was training or when I was playing. I got lost in the game, and it's called the medicine game or the healing game, but it really uplifts, and I still get lost in the game, as a coach or as a sometimes player, but the game is awesome, and it's magical, and we were lucky to be a part of it. So it was for me easy transition to pro. I started with the one professional league, and then I had to learn box lacrosse, and Charlie knows a lot about that, but it takes a while to kind of learn the little nuances of box lacrosse, and you take your bumps and bruises. So my development as a player always continued, and I never thought I was where I needed to be. I always knew that there was room for improvement, different ways to do things, different ways to see things. So I was a big student of the game, constantly trying to learn and constantly trying to reinvent myself and figuring out on every team that I was on. I played on 13 different professional teams. How can I help this team? So I would show up, I would evaluate the players and who's out there, and do I need to be more of a feeder? Do I need to be, take it to the cooker? Do I need to, be a ground ball guy and control things? Do I need to work hard off ball? And I would always kind of dissect the different rosters that I was on, and try to mesh in and make an impact. And I think the reason I was successful is because I could do other things. I could play midfield, I could play attack, play a little bit of defense, pick up ground balls. I could do a lot of the little things out there, and I was able to adapt to the different situations and the different roles I was asked to do throughout my career.
We just real quick, and listen, I mean, Case, we could go on for an hour here, and really appreciate you coming on here to our second episode, by the way.
Yeah, pretty cool second guest, or first guest to have. Yeah.
You guys got any followers, or am I talking to anybody?
Hey, maybe. Hey, I mean,
do you have any followers?
We actually do, Case. Believe it or not.
We slowly but surely. It's
a valid question.
It's a very valid question.
Justin stands out on the corner and gives everyone that drives by $20. I think we're up to like 15, 16 followers.
Is that in the budget?
It's
becoming very expensive. Yeah.
Hey, real quick, I just people want to know what are the Powell's up to. Did you want to give a little plug about Powell Lacrosse?
Let's hear it.
And what's going on with you and the brothers? I know you guys kind of joined forces and are doing some pretty cool stuff in the sport these days.
Yeah, we're super excited. I'm the director of events at Powell Lacrosse. My brother Ryan started Powell 9 years ago, and Mike and I are on board, and we're really excited about 2023. We're unloading a tremendous amount of events around the country, up to 60 events this year. We sell lacrosse sticks and uniforms, and our goal is to really honor the game and push the game forward innovatively and in a way that makes the people that played before us proud of who we are. So we're trying to push the limits, have some fun. We've learned a lot from the different companies that we've represented and learned from, and now we're putting it into our own brand, and couldn't be more excited about the future. And having my brother Mike on board, he's launching a new website in the next couple of days that he's been working on for a couple of months, and it's going to really change the way people see our company, and we just have a great plan in place. My brother Ryan has done a good job leading us to this point so far. So super excited. We used to in high school make hats that said Powell Brothers Lacrosse, and
Nice.
people would make fun of us, and now we have a brand. So we believed in ourselves and worked hard to get where we're at. But it's super awesome to be able to wake up and have a conference call on a Monday morning with my two brothers on the call, and
that's awesome.
trying to plan things out. So the future's bright for Powell Lacrosse and the sport in general.
Well, Case, thank you so much for coming on, and just as a personal note, I'm proud to call you an ex former teammate of mine, Team USA, definitely a good friend. And, we have this special connection, and we'll have this for the rest of our lives, being part of the 22 family. So I think it's kind of cool. And, again, really appreciate you coming on today, Case.
Thank you, Laser. Thanks for all you do. And it was really awesome that we got that catch in with Gary, Ryan, and Mike at the convention. I thought that was really cool.
Something to remember.
We'll be able to hang on to.
Yep. Absolutely. I'll throw the video of that up so everybody can see that. And Casey, too, if you do happen to see any sort of clips from the last episode, and check out the sweatshirt I was wearing courtesy of Powell Lacrosse. You guys make some pretty comfortable stuff, so we appreciate it.
You've converted a baseball guy over.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. Casey, thank you so much for your time.
Take care.
All right, guys.